Welcome to Ancient Britain Myths, where history meets the supernatural. In this series we journey deep into the haunted past of the British Isles, exploring real ghost stories, chilling legends, and mysterious folklore. Each tale you'll hear tonight is based on authentic accounts of hauntings, filled with suspense and atmosphere. So, sit back, relax, and let the crackling fire and the eerie stories transport you to another world, a world where the past never truly rests. The Body in the Bread Oven. Farleigh Hungerford Castle, an ancient stronghold that has stood for centuries, its stone walls bearing witness to untold secrets. The castle is nestled in the quiet rolling hills of Somerset, a place once filled with grandeur, but now only a haunting shell of its former self. Built in the 14th century by Sir Walter Hungerford, the castle became home to one of the wealthiest and most powerful families in England. But behind its grand facade, a darkness lurked. The Hungerford family had its share of scandal, greed and betrayal, yet no story from its long history is more chilling than that of Lady Elizabeth Hungerford and the mysterious fate that befell her. Elizabeth was married to Sir Edward Hungerford, a man known for his cruel and volatile temper. He was feared by his servants and respected by his peers, but behind closed doors, his rage was often unleashed upon his wife. Servants spoke in hushed tones of the violence they suspected, bruises hidden beneath layers of fine clothing, and arguments that echoed through the castle's stone halls late into the night. Then, one stormy night, Lady Elizabeth vanished. Sir Edward claimed she had fallen ill, that her death was sudden, tragic, but whispers among the staff told a different story. They had heard her crying out in the night, followed by the sound of a struggle. Then, silence. The days that followed were uneasy. The once vibrant castle seemed to grow darker, colder. Rooms that had once been filled with laughter and light now felt oppressive, shadowed by something unseen. The servants continued their duties, but the atmosphere had changed. They spoke of doors opening by themselves, of footsteps heard in the dead of night when no one was there. But most unnerving was the castle's old bread oven. The large, ancient stone oven, once a bustling part of the kitchen, had grown cold and disused. But there was something strange about it now, a chill that didn't belong. Some said they felt an invisible presence when passing by. Others swore they heard soft tapping sounds, faint but unmistakable. As the rumours grew, so did the fear. Was Lady Elizabeth truly gone? Or was her spirit, restless and vengeful, trapped somewhere within the very walls of the castle? Months passed, and the rumours refused to die down. Sir Edward carried on as though nothing had happened, but the castle staff knew better. There was something wrong, something unspoken, lurking just beneath the surface. Years later, during a period of renovation, the castle's secret was finally revealed. Workmen tasked with restoring parts of the old kitchen made a grim discovery. The large bread oven, sealed for so long, was opened, and inside they found the skeletal remains of a woman. The bones were brittle, ancient, but they told a story that had been hidden for decades. The castle's servants were quick to draw their conclusions. The remains were those of Lady Elizabeth Hungerford. Her body, it seemed, had been concealed in the bread oven by none other than her husband, Sir Edward. In a fit of rage, he had murdered her and hidden her body, hoping that time and decay would erase his crime. But Elizabeth's spirit, it seemed, was not so easily silenced. The discovery only added to the castle's already notorious reputation. Visitors to Farleigh Hungerford Castle now came not only to see its impressive architecture, but to experience its hauntings. The area around the bread oven became infamous for strange occurrences. Guests and staff alike spoke of feeling an overwhelming sense of dread as they neared the oven. A sudden drop in temperature, as if the air itself had turned to ice. Some claimed they heard whispers, soft, indistinct, but always there, just beyond the edge of hearing. Others said they felt the hairs on the back of their neck stand on end, as though someone or something was watching them. One particularly chilling account comes from a visitor who dared to linger by the bread oven late one night. As he stood alone in the kitchen, the fire long since extinguished, he heard a sound, faint at first, but growing louder. It was the unmistakable sound of nails, scraping against stone. The sound grew closer, more frantic, as if something trapped inside the walls was desperate to escape. The man fled in terror, vowing never to return to the castle. But the most unsettling stories come from those who claim to have seen her. Lady Elizabeth's ghost, a pale figure dressed in the finery of her time, drifting through the darkened corridors of the castle. Some say she is searching for justice, for peace, but others believe she is trapped, forever bound to the place where she met her tragic end. Farleigh Hungerford Castle is now a ruin, a crumbling monument to the passage of time. Yet, despite its decay, the legend of Lady Elizabeth Hungerford endures. To this day, visitors to the castle report strange occurrences, cold spots, whispers, and the occasional glimpse of a shadowy figure in the corner of their eye. And if you stand by the bread oven, the place where her bones lay hidden for so many years, you might feel it too. The cold, the weight of the air pressing down on you, the sense that you are not alone. Perhaps you will hear it, the soft scratching of nails on stone, the faintest whisper, a voice calling out from the darkness, longing for release. Lady Elizabeth Hungerford's story is one of love turned to hate, of betrayal and murder, and of a restless spirit that refuses to be forgotten. Her ghost, they say, still roams the halls of Farleigh Hungerford Castle, searching for the justice that was denied her in life. And as long as her story is told, she will never truly be gone. The Ghost of Drury Lane Theatre. Theatre Royal Drury Lane, known to many as the most haunted theatre in London and perhaps in all of England, a place where the glamour of the West End's performances is rivalled only by the whispers of those who have long since left the stage. Or so we think. For over 3 centuries, Drury Lane has stood as a beacon for actors, playwrights, and theatre lovers. But beneath its glittering reputation lies a much darker history, one filled with mystery, murder, and ghosts. To this day, actors and stagehands alike have reported strange, inexplicable occurrences within its walls. The most infamous of these is the figure known as the Man in Grey. The legend of the Man in Grey dates back to the 18th century. Witnesses describe him as a tall figure, dressed in a flowing grey cloak, a tricorn hat perched upon his head. His face is pale, his eyes sunken, and he is often seen walking through the upper galleries, only to vanish into the walls themselves. But the question remains, who was this man? And why does he still walk the halls of Drury Lane centuries after his death? The story begins during a renovation of the theatre in the late 1800s. While restoring parts of the auditorium, workmen discovered a hidden passageway behind a wall in the upper galleries. As they broke through the brick, they stumbled upon a ghastly sight, a skeleton curled up within the hidden space. The bones were old, brittle, and clutched within the skeletal hand was a dagger, the blade still stained with blood. The discovery sent shockwaves through the theatre community. Who was this unfortunate soul buried alive behind the walls? Some believed it was an actor, murdered in a fit of jealousy by a rival. Others speculated it was a man of higher status, wronged by a lover or a business partner. But one thing was certain. This was no accident. The body had been deliberately concealed, entombed behind the walls of Drury Lane, never meant to be found. But found it was. And soon after the discovery, the sightings of the Man in Grey began to increase. Actors rehearsing on stage would catch glimpses of him in the shadows, a fleeting figure always watching from the upper balconies. Some said they felt a cold breeze pass over them whenever he appeared, though the air in the theatre was still. Others claimed to hear footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoing through the empty hallways at night. But the strangest encounters happen during performances themselves. Numerous actors have reported seeing the man in grey just before the curtains rise. He sits quietly in one of the back rows, his pale face just visible beneath the brim of his hat. And then, just as the performance begins, he vanishes. In fact, many believe that seeing the man in grey is a sign of good luck. Despite his ominous appearance, some say that his presence brings with it a successful performance, as if his spirit still yearns for the stage. But not all encounters with the man in grey are so benign. One evening, a young stagehand was closing up the theatre after a late rehearsal. He had heard the stories, of course, but like many, he dismissed them as just that, stories. As he made his way through the empty auditorium, he felt a sudden chill, the temperature dropping so quickly his breath turned to mist before his eyes. He froze. The hair on the back of his neck stood up as a soft sound reached his ears, the unmistakable tap, tap, tap of footsteps. Slowly, he turned toward the upper galleries, and there, standing in the shadows, was the man in grey. For a moment neither moved. The figure simply stared, his eyes dark and hollow, his hand resting on the hilt of the dagger at his side. And then, without a word, the man in grey turned and began to walk slowly toward the back of the gallery, disappearing into the very wall where his bones had been found so many years before. The young stagehand never returned to Drury Lane. There are other ghosts said to haunt the theatre, but none as infamous as the man in grey. Some believe he was an actor killed by a rival in a fit of rage. Others claim he was a nobleman, wronged in a sordid affair and doomed to wander the theatre for eternity. But whoever he was in life, in death, he is bound to Drury Lane. Many who work at the theatre accept his presence. Some even feel a strange comfort in it. After all, he only seems to appear before successful performances, as if he's offering his approval from beyond the grave. Yet, for every performer who views the man in grey as a benevolent figure, there are those who have felt his malevolent gaze, those who say the air turns cold, the lights flicker, and a deep sense of dread fills the room whenever he appears. The truth of his identity may never be known, but one thing is certain. Drury Lane Theatre is a place where the past and the present intertwine, where the echoes of those long gone still linger in the air. And if you ever find yourself alone in the auditorium, take care not to glance too long at the empty seats, for you may find yourself face to face with the ghost of Drury Lane. The coach made of bones. Okehampton Castle, perched on the edge of Dartmoor in Devon, is a place of ancient history and chilling legends. Once a stronghold for Norman lords, it now lies in ruins, its crumbling stone walls haunted by centuries of dark tales. But there is one story, more chilling than all the others, that echoes through the halls of this abandoned fortress. The tale of Lady Howard and her ghostly coach, made of bones. Lady Howard was a figure shrouded in mystery. Some say she was a woman of great beauty and wealth, while others speak of her cruelty and ambition. What is certain, however, is that she was a woman who married 4 times, and each of her husbands met an untimely death. The locals began to whisper that Lady Howard had been cursed, that death followed her wherever she went, but it wasn't until after her own death that the true horror of her legacy was revealed. For Lady Howard did not rest in peace. Instead, her spirit was condemned to ride each night in a ghostly coach pulled by a headless horse and constructed entirely of human bones. The story begins shortly after Lady Howard's death. The people of Okehampton spoke of strange occurrences near the castle, an eerie silence that would descend upon the land at nightfall, broken only by the sound of hooves thundering through the darkness. But these were no ordinary horses. The villagers soon realized that the figure driving the coach was none other than Lady Howard herself. The coach would appear suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, racing down the deserted roads surrounding the castle. Pulled by a headless horse, the coach was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Its frame was constructed of bones, human bones, the skeletal remains of her 4 dead husbands. As the legend goes, Lady Howard is doomed to drive the coach every night, travelling from the castle to Tavistock, where she must pick a single blade of grass from the churchyard. Only when she has collected every blade of grass will her soul finally be at rest. But until then, she's condemned to an eternity of torment. Witnesses have described the coach with terrifying detail. The bones of the horses gleam in the moonlight, the headless driver holding the reins with a skeletal hand. The sound of hooves echoes through the night, though the horse has no head from which to snort or breathe. Some say they have heard the bones rattle as the coach hurtles through the countryside, disappearing just as quickly as it appears. But the most terrifying aspect of the story is the coach's arrival. It is said that anyone who sees Lady Howard's ghostly carriage will soon be met with tragedy. A death in the family, a terrible accident, or a sudden illness is sure to follow. The coach is not merely a symbol of Lady Howard's curse, but a harbinger of doom. One story in particular stands out. A farmer, returning late one evening from the nearby town, claimed to have seen the coach speeding toward him along the narrow country road. The night was silent, and the air felt heavy, thick with an unnatural chill. As the coach approached, the farmer froze in terror, watching as the headless horse galloped closer and closer. But just as the coach seemed ready to crash into him, it vanished. The farmer stood in stunned silence, the echo of hooves still ringing in his ears. The next morning, he learned that his wife had fallen gravely ill during the night. She passed away just days later. There are many similar stories of people who claim to have seen the coach, only to suffer misfortune shortly after. Some say the coach can be heard before it is seen, the sound of rattling bones and the distant thunder of hooves growing louder as it draws near. It is said that if you listen carefully on a still night, you can hear the coach as it makes its nightly journey. The wind carries with it the unmistakable sound of bones clattering together, and the hollow clop of hooves on stone. But be warned, for those who witness Lady Howard's spectral carriage are never the same. Okehampton Castle itself has become a place of legend. Though its stone walls are crumbling and its halls are long abandoned, the castle is not devoid of life. Visitors to the ruins have reported strange sensations, an unnatural cold that seems to seep into their bones. Some say they have seen ghostly figures flitting through the castle's empty rooms, shadows that disappear when approached. But the most unnerving reports come from those who have heard the sound of the coach in the distance, the faint but unmistakable rattle of bones carried on the wind. To this day, Okehampton Castle remains a place of mystery, where the lines between the living and the dead blur, and where the curse of Lady Howard lingers, waiting for its next victim. Lady Howard's story is one of betrayal, death, and eternal punishment. Condemned to ride in her ghastly coach for all eternity, she remains a figure of terror and fascination in the folklore of Devon. The sight of her spectral carriage is a sign of impending doom, and those unlucky enough to cross its path are doomed to suffer the consequences. But why was Lady Howard cursed? Some say it was because of the deaths of her husbands, that she was responsible for their untimely ends. Others claim it was her greed, her ambition, and her cruelty that led to her fate. Whatever the reason, her spirit remains bound to this world, forced to carry out her eternal penance, one blade of grass at a time. The next time you find yourself near Okehampton Castle, take heed of the legends, for if you hear the sound of hooves in the distance, or the rattle of bones on the wind, you may find yourself face to face with the ghostly figure of Lady Howard, and her coach made of bones. Thank you for joining us on this journey through some of Britain's most chilling ghost stories. We hope these tales have sent a shiver down your spine and left you wondering what might still be lurking in the shadows. If you enjoyed these stories, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to never miss another haunting tale. We have many more ghost stories, legends and hauntings to explore. Until next time, stay curious and stay haunted.